everybody, it's Judy with the Latitude Group. I'm here with Victoria Williams of Capstone Title, and we're having tea and title talk today.
I love that.
I know.
I like that one.
It's super fun. So we're gonna pour some tea and talk about title. And Victoria, what are the differences between title for buyers and for sellers?
So you've got two different policies that are being issued in a transaction. One of which is generally always paid for by the seller, and that's going to be a homeowner's or an owner's policy. It just depends on the type of real property that they're getting. And then the other one is paid for by a buyer, which is the lender's title insurance policy. And so that is something that a lender always requires in a transaction. Now, if a buyer doesn't do any sort of type of financing, then that policy doesn't ever get issued in a transaction.
But if the buyer's not doing financing, do they want to buy a title insurance policy anyway?
So if they're not doing financing, then generally, traditionally speaking, the seller pays for the owner's or homeowner's policy on the buyer's behalf. And yes, we always encourage people to get title insurance policies when they apply to the transaction. So,
awesome. Yep. Good
big
to
deal.
know. Yeah,
big deal.
Because if you don't get title insurance policy, and a lien is processed like sometime during the transaction and you didn't see it originally, but it just happens just before you close, that lien's on your policy, on your
property.
Home. Yeah.
Right. So title insurance is the insurance of the past, and it insures buyers that they're getting clear marketable title, and then it insures a lender that they're getting the same clear marketable title, so that their debt that's getting secured on the property takes first lien position. Or if you've got multiple lenders offering multiple financing, then they would fall in their appropriate lien position. But yeah, let's say a mechanic's lien is filed on a property and nobody has title insurance. Well, if that buyer were to turn around and sell that property, they would have to pay it, even though it's not their debt.
Right. What should buyers and sellers expect with their title company when they go to title?
So when you get to title, what you should expect is a smooth meeting after all the hard work that you've done with your agent, and if your lender's involved with your lender up until that point in time. And usually I tell people to anticipate, anywhere between 30 minutes to an hour and a half for a closing settlement meeting. And an hour and a half is a little extreme, but as I'm sure you've known, you've gotten some great people who you just enjoy spending time with them, and it's really hard not to be excited and in the moment. So I always plan for an hour with settlement, because you never know what questions could arise. They could be a brand new home buyer. They could be someone who is selling their third, fourth, fifth property, and they don't have a lot of questions. They just want to know what their bottom line is. So yeah, a smooth end to your long hard work is what you should expect at settlement.
What about a little celebration afterwards?
Of course, always. Maybe pop some bottles if that's your thing. So.
Cheers. Yep. So Victoria, the next question I have is, there's settlement fees involved. Who pays for the settlement fees?
In the transaction. Yeah, good question.
Yeah.
So each side has their own fees associated with it. A seller, traditionally, generally speaking, pays for a homeowner's or an owner's title insurance policy. That really just depends on what type of real property is involved in the transaction, and also who it is the party is that's buying that real property. And then there's other escrow fees associated that just are required by us as the title and escrow company, to ensure our costs and we're meeting regulation. We keep our fees really as relatively low as we can, but we're regulated by the insurance department. And the only way we can issue any sort of a policy but also do escrow in a whole is if there is a policy issued. So a seller usually has fees associated with their side, which would include that owner's title insurance policy and then any of the escrow fees. And then the buyer, if they're getting financing, they pay for a lender's policy and any of their title and escrow fees associated with it.
So they each pay their own?
They each pay their own unless it's stated otherwise in the contract.
seller to pay a certain amount towards closing costs.
Right. Or sometimes with a lot of builders, what people are encountering these days is builders won't pay for an owner's policy and they put it on the buyer to pay for that. And I always encourage buyers to get that extra protection.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, definitely. Good idea. Oh, I had another question. So, what does recording actually mean?
So recording means the conveyance documents and any interest being secured by another party get submitted for the respective county, and the property is conveyed over to the appropriate parties. And I think too, one thing you'd mentioned is how long does that take?
Yeah, how long does this recording take?
Yeah. The recording honestly can be anywhere between 5 minutes to days. In Utah, most every single county is a part of our electronic recording system now. Some counties, though, in our more rural areas, they're still not on board for that. So we would have to FedEx overnight, for instance, those conveyance documents out. So with Salt Lake County, where a lot of properties are, I notice generally it takes about 2 hours for that to happen, given that everything is going right. But we're in the age of technology, so things can definitely vary from there. So
good to know. So, sometimes people come into settlement and at the end of settlement they're like, okay, where's my keys? Does that ever happen?
That happens more than you would think it does. And I always just refer people back to their agent because you have found them that property, you've worked to get them there. And I always make it a point to explain the process as well, especially before that question can come up, but even when that question comes up too, of saying, here's our plan, here's where we're going with this, what's going to happen. Sometimes on the off chance we get lucky and keys are left at the title company, but I always like to give the agent the opportunity to really wrap up and close that deal with their client. So
typically you don't get the keys until recording has happened.
Yes, thank you for touching on that one. So not often are you just handed those keys after you sign that paperwork.
No.
So
okay, and then one other question. So where does settlement actually happen?
Generally speaking, settlement, we have it happen at our office, or we make arrangements for other places. And I think in discussion at one point you talked about if people can sign online. Usually no. We prefer not to, just because there's so much risk and fraud associated anymore. But I've had plenty of people where we've gone to meet them at their business, or we've made arrangements for a mobile notary to meet with them, or they're out of state, so we make arrangements in those situations, and we just coordinate and facilitate that aspect. So you as the agent, the only thing you have to worry about is making sure you're meeting deadlines and you're negotiating the contract for your client.
And so if you're buying a property, say you live in California, you're buying a property in Utah, you don't have to come to Utah to sign the documents, but
we would like for you to.
Yeah, that would be
because
great.
Who doesn't want to hang out with someone? But yes, we make it happen even if someone's in California buying here.
Awesome. Very awesome. Thanks, Victoria.
Thanks so much for having me.
Cheers.
Cheers. Tea and title. We should do this more.
I know, it's fun.
Yeah.
We'll have to come up with great title questions.